When I was at Crippled Children's Hospital in school, during the summer in South Dakota, we often have tornado watches and warnings and things like that, and often have actual tornadoes come through. One of the directors at Crippled Children's, an assistant director, had an experience that kind of made him hypersensitive. He and his family were going someplace, coming back from someplace, and there was a tornado warning that came in the area that they were in, and they were driving on the interstate and did the absolute wrong thing to do. They parked underneath a overpass with the windows all rolled up tight because it was raining and stuff like that. Well, when the tornado did pass over them, and it blew all the windows out of the car. After that, and maybe understandably so, he was pretty hypersensitive. And in any case, at Crippled Children's, whenever there were tornado warnings or watches, particularly warnings, we would have to go down in the basement in the lower level, back in the area by the that led to the laundry room and the utility room where the big furnaces were and things like that. There were no windows in that area, in that hallway, and it was pretty much all underground, so it's probably the safest place. To get there, though, was always an interesting thing because generally, particularly in this one year, we had a lot of tornado activity, and it was usually later in the evenings, 9 o'clock or after, when a warning would come through. And so we kind of had a plan, and what we did was, because there was only one elevator, they would load up as many kids as they could on one of the few rolling beds that we had, and put that in that did fit in the elevator, and then load up the elevator and take them down. But even at that, it was a pretty slow process. So kids like me that could and generally wouldn't have my braces on, so actually walking up and down the steps wasn't much of an option, but we could certainly crawl down the steps. And so what we did was, like in my case, is grab one of the younger children that couldn't move on their own, and actually with them on your lap, go down the steps, and then more than once it was actually taking two kids down at the same time. And then we'd sit down and wait for whatever. And of course, nothing really came. Pretty much always that director would show up and, be panicking around and stuff. It was kind of an interesting thing. It never did get really hit. However, one time when we were out camping at Lake Brant, and it would have been my group of older children and older boys, and it was storming really bad. It was just pouring, and we always had to put up our own tents, and they were by that time Henry had gotten us some pretty decent tents, but in our case we had put our tent in kind of a bad spot. It seemed good. It was fairly flat, but it was just a little bit down at an angle, and the water was just pouring into it, and we had 6 inches of water in the bottom of the tent, and we didn't have any cots or anything, so our sleeping bags were soaked, and we finally just got in all of our tent, and we got up and went into the bus, which wasn't a lot of fun because buses were exactly designed to try and sleep in them. And as we're in the bus, and it's storming really bad, and we're looking off to the west, and we actually see 3 tornadoes. And they're kind of slightly north of us, north and west of us. And we were watching them and sitting out there, just kind of watching them go by, and we found it pretty interesting. And it appeared that a couple of them kind of went together, and, it was kind of an interesting thing to watch. It was lightning and stuff like that. It was still storming pretty good. And then all of a sudden a station wagon shows up, and it's the school station wagon, and it's got that director is in it, and he comes in, and we're sitting in the bus, and he comes into the bus, and he was just livid. He was yelling, "Where the hell's Henry?" and all this. And well, Henry's tent was high and dry, and him and most of the kids that were needed extra care that required cots, those were all in his tent, and they were all high and dry. They were all sleeping, and the director, he yells at us. He goes, "Don't you know there's tornado warnings?" And we're like, "Well, we don't really have the radio on or anything, but we kind of figured there was because we saw 3 of them just a little while ago over there." And he goes, "What? Why aren't you guys out, down in the ditch or something like that?" And we're like, "Oh, because the ditch is full of water." And he was, and of course, we really did and it probably wasn't as funny as it to everybody now as it seemed, but it certainly seemed funny to us. And he just had a fit. He went and woke up Henry, and they got all the kids, that needed extra help and stuff, and got everybody in the bus and made us go back to school. And, the amazing thing was by that time, the storm had pretty much passed. So we're just driving down the interstate, running over frogs right and left. There was just all over the place. It was just pretty crazy. And then we get back to school, about 4 o'clock in the morning, go to bed, and then we had to get up again at 9 or so. And then we ended up having to go back up there, get all our stuff, the soaking wet sleeping bags and the tents and all that, and take them down. And then we had to bring them back to school and unroll everything so that it could dry out. And it was just kind of a really interesting experience. But anyway, we made it through. No harm, no foul, although Henry didn't end up getting fired like the director had threatened. So I guess things kind of worked out.